Gary Mannion. Tonight, depending where you are, I'm going to be talking about the subject of psychic surgery, different healing modalities, but mainly focusing on the subject of psychic surgery in all its different wonderful forms. So I'm going to talk about how now for just over 15 years. Geez, long time. So for me, I started off with mediumship back when I was a little kid. I used to see and talk to people who physically weren't there. The first memory for me really is when I was 13, my dad took me along to the local spiritualist church. I was sitting down the front, saw the medium tune in, and all of a sudden I heard this voice in my head saying, "You can do that." So of course, being 13, hearing voices in my head, I gave it a go. And that started me off with my kind of psychic mediumship pathway. And my love was for mediumship. I'd seen people do healing, but it really wasn't my interest. Now, when I was younger, I really wanted to get into the circle at the church. And the head healer at the church said to me that if I did the healing, she would get me into the circle. So even though I had no interest in healing, I was like, okay, I really want to get into the circle, so fine, I'll do the healing. And so I actually got special permission from the SNU to do healing at the local church. And then when I was 18, I was up in Manchester teaching some psychic development. And the group I was working with already did a form of spiritual healing. So they said to me, do I want to have a go? So I thought, okay, you know, I've done healing, put your hands on someone at the end, you come through. Sure, I'll give it a go. So I was instructed by the group to work on this woman's stomach. So I went to make a connection with spirit, and all of a sudden I felt this very strong presence behind me. And I saw these hands go into her stomach and in a sense, start pulling out what to me looked like mold. So I said to her afterwards, look, this is probably gonna make no sense to you, but I saw this mold getting pulled out of your stomach. And she said, actually, that makes perfect sense. Every now and then I have to go to the hospital to get it removed when it goes all moldy. So I thought, strange, but okay, I'll go with it. From then on, whenever I would do healing, I would see these hands go in and, in a sense, operate. Over the years, that's developed a lot more into the psychic surgery pathway. The way I work is I work with a surgeon called Abraham. He has a team of surgeons that work with him who specialize in all different areas. But Abraham is my go-to person. So his specialty is back problems and gynecological problems. If you come for something else, then it'll be a different spirit that's working, but it'll still be Abraham who's giving me the information. Now, the way I work is slightly different to some psychic surgeons in that for a lot of psychic surgeons, when they're working, they're in a deep trance. So the medium has no conscious awareness of what's going on. And some psychic surgeons can be into trance for 10 to 12 hours a day, which, if I'm honest, I'm too nosy. I like to know what's going on. So I practice what I call conscious trance. So when I'm working, from the neck down, Abraham and his team are fully in control. From the neck up, I'm fully aware of what's going on. And the way I describe it is, it's like being in two places at once. So I'm aware of everything that's going on physically in the room. I can see people, I can talk to people. At the same time, I can see and feel these additional hands go into the body and in a sense operate. Now, I've been lucky enough to be able to work with different psychic surgeons throughout the world, especially in places like Brazil, where psychic surgeons are actually allowed to cut skin. It's amazing to see. If you've never seen it, it is amazing. One of the main factors between genuine psychic surgery and fake psychic surgery you'll come across is with genuine psychic surgery, there's often no pain. There's no infection afterwards, even if the surgeon cuts. There's often not a lot of blood. I say often because although it's not common, you do get some psychic surgeons who do cut skin and there's blood, but it is rare. Now, what's interesting is in Brazil, they're allowed to cut skin. Their hands can be dirty, the room can be dirty, the tools they use can be dirty. The only legal requirement they have to follow there is if they do stitch you back up afterwards, the needle they use must be sterilized. Nothing else has to be sterilized. The room can be filthy, but the needle they use must be sterilized. And so with genuine psychic surgery, there's never been cases of infection or anything like that afterwards. And there's been some amazing surgeons, again, mainly in Brazil and the Philippines where they cut skin. Now, psychic surgery works just as well without cutting skin. The whole cutting skin is mainly done to show people that it can be done. So when I had a chance to work out with John of God in Brazil, what was interesting in there is you would see people who had, say, a heart condition. I remember this one woman, she had a heart condition and she opted for physical surgery. So what most people don't know is even with psychic surgeons that cut, the majority of the psychic surgery that's done is what's called invisible surgery. So no one will actually physically touch you. but you can opt to have physical surgery if you want to. So this woman had the typical thing that God will do, where he puts the scissors up the nose, and then he'll pull them out, and there's something attached to the scissors. Nowhere near her heart, but it improved her heart condition. Another common one I've seen him do was where he'll take a scalpel and he'll scrape the eye. And that can be anything from a sore toe to a kidney. So it's really done to show people that it can be done, but it works just as well without cutting the skin, which is very good in places like Europe and the Western world where we're not allowed to cut skin. But it is amazing to see. One thing that makes psychic surgery different to, say, standard hands-on healing is hands-on healing generally is similar to if you're ill and you take a paracetamol or some medication to aid your body to recover by itself. So where possible, it's just stimulating your energy to repair your energy enough so the body can correct itself. With psychic surgery, the majority of the time we are trying to do that. Wherever possible, we're looking for the body to do the work. So for example, most of the cells in your body have a full blueprint of how your body should be. So if you've got a knee that's worn out the cartilage, your body has the recipe to make more cartilage. What's happened is the genes to do so have been turned off. So what we would look to do with psychic surgery is to stimulate the body to turn that process back on. So where possible, we're getting the body to repair that knee by itself. We're just stimulating it to do so. However, where possible, psychic surgery, you may have intervention where spirit will step in and remove things from the body. And I have worked with people who say the night before their surgery, and Abraham has stepped in, done the work, and then on the surgery, there's nothing there the next day. But wherever possible, we're trying to get the body to do the work. And we still work with the basis that all healing is self-healing. So we're just trying to stimulate the body to do that work itself. Any questions at all so far? Otherwise, I'll just keep chatting away. I've spent 15 years talking about it. I can just keep talking. Yeah, if you have any questions, don't be shy. Just pop your hand up. A few notes. Just take my notes and make sure I'm not putting anything. So one thing I get asked often is, can anyone do psychic surgery? And yes, I'm a full believer. If I can do it, anyone can do it. Now, different psychic surgeons will do work differently. So for example, the way I work is I have Abraham, who's my go-to. He has a team that works with him. I'm fully conscious when I'm working. Different psychic surgeons will have different team members at different times. So again, if we use John of God as an example, if you go there, you might go there Tuesday at 12 o'clock and he'll tell you to come back Thursday at 3 p.m. when a particular spirit's going to be working through him. Whereas other psychic surgeons will channel those spirits there and then. And I said, then you've got people like me who I work with Abraham and he directs it all, but Abraham's in control of it all. Different psychic surgeons work differently. So I said, you've got those who cut skin, you've got those who don't cut skin. A very common one as well is what I call Aboriginal psychic surgery. And that works with the basis that with the Aboriginals, if you were to fall over and cut and break your arm, rather than fix it physically, they would fix it etherically, with the belief that if they can fix it etherically, the physical will take care of itself. So this is where you'll see psychic surgeons where they won't actually touch your body, they'll work above the body and still get amazing results.
You answered my question. In other words, the etheric body and physical body, they're interdependent. So you're working with one affects the other. So you're actually working with the etheric body.
Yeah, so some will work physically hands-on. Others will work purely on the etheric. They won't touch the physical at all.
Okay.
But they still get amazing results. Now, when we're working with psychic surgery, 3 areas we're looking at is the physical, the trigger, and the root. So the physical is any way that a problem would manifest. So that can be an ache, pain, the way that you're living your life. The trigger is going to be the energy or the emotion that made it become physical. And then the root's going to be, why does it exist in the first place? Is it inherited? Is it karmic? Is it a life lesson? Now, if we don't treat all those 3 areas, we're going to get a condition that's either not going to go or it's going to remanifest some other way later on. So a great example is if we take a woman who has breast cancer. So the manifestation, the physical would be the cancer. It may have been triggered 2 years ago when her partner left her or cheated on her. But the root of it may be that she's inherited it. So she's always carried that potential within her cells. It just took that emotional shock to then make that physical.
You're circumventing the infections by working with the etheric body?
In essence, we're correcting. So one thing I get a lot is you'll get people who will say will come with karmic issues. And their argument will be, well, my issue is karmic, so I have to live with it. It's not going to go. My argument would be, if you've learned the lesson from something and there's nothing more to gain from it, then there's no reason your body can't let go of that.
Okay.
Everyone's always different. I could treat two people with the exact same condition. One may make a full recovery there and then. One may need further treatment, or one may not even get the results they're looking for. So there's so many factors to take on board, and everyone is completely different as to why they're going to manifest their illnesses. All our illnesses are an opportunity to learn and grow. So healing isn't always there to remove a condition. Sometimes healing might be there to help you live with that condition, to live with the pain or how it's affecting your life, how it's affecting your mentality, things like that. Sally.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you started to touch on my question, which is how much does the belief of the person receiving the healing, impact whether or not they're actually healed?
So the only thing I ever ask people is that they have the want to get better. So they don't even have to believe that psychic surgery worked. I remember a couple of years ago, I did a documentary with the BBC. And on that documentary, there's a friend of mine, and he is a complete skeptic, and he's still a complete skeptic. But he had a condition where his body was producing breast tissue. So he said to me one day, he's like, do you know, why not have a go? Give me healing, see if it will work. So he had one treatment and breast tissue disappeared. He'd had no medical intervention. It shouldn't have disappeared, but it did. So the BBC, they interviewed him and said, well, what's your opinion on it? Why are you still a skeptic if it worked for you? And his answer was, well, he believed that because he allowed me to do the healing, it must have kickstarted something in his body for his body to repair itself. So he still doesn't believe in the healing, but he knows that the healing worked for him, which is fine. Sadly, we live in a society nowadays where a lot of us do use our illnesses as a crutch. And I can remember, I've worked with so many people's backs and stuff like that where they don't respond because actually they're using it as an illness, or the illness is stopping them from doing something they actually don't want to do. It's a bit like the fallacy of, Jesus healing the leper and then the leper sues Jesus for putting him out of work. And sadly, that is the kind of society we live at. So sometimes, a lot of times when you're doing healing, you're not necessarily treating the symptoms. You're actually trying to get someone to a stage where they actually want to receive healing. The other side of it is you'll get people, especially with absent healing, there's always the issue of, does the person need to know they're getting an absent healing? Do they need to give permission? From an ethical point of view, sure, yeah, you need someone's permission. But from a healing point of view, as long as someone wants to get better on some level, they're going to accept that healing. And the example I often use is, if you've got a Christian who doesn't believe in spiritual healing, thinks it's evil, thinks it's the work of the devil, but is praying to God every night to get better, then on some level they want to get better. So the healing is going to be received. So yeah, as long as someone wants to get better, healing should have an effect.
Okay, thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Joe. So Abraham. So Abraham lived about 3,500 years ago. He's from a place called Ur, which is modern day Iraq. There's a lot of connotations to him being the Abraham from the Bible. His opinion on that is very different people. The Abraham depicted in the Bible is a very different person he was. He was never involved in healing when he was alive. He used to lead tribes. And he actually got into healing from spirit side of life. So Abraham, he's disembodied. He's been in this for quite a while, wanted to still work with our side of life, got into healing, and then chose me as a medium to be his channel to direct the healing. Now, Abraham will make it clear, I don't own him in any way, shape, or form. He works with me. Well, he says that. He hasn't read the contract. He works with me because we have the same desire. We're wanting to achieve the same goal. He knows my energy. But Abraham will go to anyone who calls on him. All he would say, because people have said, can I work with Abraham? And he'll say, sure, if you want to, call me if I can help, I will. What he would say, though, is you may have someone in your own team who actually knows your energy much better than he does and can actually do a much better job with you than he could. So by all means, you can call on him, but he would always give way to someone else if someone else could do a better job through you. He hasn't picked me because I'm anything special or anything like that. He likes to make that very clear. Just he knows my energy. He can work with my energy. Now he has cut skin a few times because I would ask him in the past. I'd say to him, could you cut skin? And he'd say, yeah, I can, but I don't need to, so I won't. And I was like, well, yeah, I understand that, but could you not do it anyway? It would look much better. So he has done it a few times. It's an amazing experience. I can remember one time working on my grandmother. She had corns in her feet, but they were so deep rooted that she had to be booked for surgery to have them removed. So she said, I know you can't remove them, but can you give me some healing, maybe help with the pain? So I thought, yeah, we'd give it a go. And the amazing experience was, so when I'm working, or when Abraham's working through me, I'm aware of my hands are moving. I don't feel any heat or cold. I don't know how much or little pressure is being used. Often my hands will vibrate. I don't feel that, but I do have an awareness of my hands moving. And I remember working on my grandmother's feet, and the skin itself just felt like paper. And as he pressed upon the skin, it literally just felt like paper parting. And then he pulled these long white sticks out of her feet, which were the corns. No pain, no blood. I can remember as well, I was doing an interview for an MTV TV program as well. And in that, he removed a verruca. And actually, as you removed the verruca, you could see the blood had completely dried and congealed underneath as he was removing the verruca. So that was an amazing experience. And again, the skin, it just felt like paper. It just gave away. I've seen him working on bones where he'll use vibration to actually try and change the shape or structure of the bone, so that no nerves get damaged and things like that. So it's an amazing experience to watch psychic surgery. Even when you're not cutting skin, the potential is, you know, the body built itself, it's unlimited. Psychic surgery itself is a form of physical mediumship. So we can work with the group energy as well. So again, using John of God as an example, he's probably the most famous one that we know of at the moment, or living at the moment. Most people don't realize when he's working, he has 150 mediums sitting and giving power. So even when he's not there, the healing results that people get is amazing because you've got all that group energy. He's literally just the conduit, the focal point for that energy, for the spirit teams to work. And that's where the majority of the work will be absent. And with psychic surgery, we have some amazing results with absent healing. You do get some people who need that physical touch and respond better to the physical touch, but the majority of healing can be done absently. And there's no reason it shouldn't be. But as I said, some people do need that physical touch. One thing I got to ask a lot is, when we look at Brazil and the Philippines, psychic surgery is very big there, much bigger than it is in the Western world. And I think it's more to do just where their culture's at. Another really interesting thing with psychic surgery is predominantly it tends to be men. However, especially in the last couple of years, we're getting a lot more women starting to take up psychic surgery. But definitely going back, it was predominantly men that were psychic surgeons. Also, especially when you look at Brazil, there's this big theme between the Bible and psychic surgery. So you have a lot of psychic surgeons whose spirits come through are characters from the Bible, or they're doctors who will work in the name of Jesus. There seems to be that strong link. And I think it's to do with Brazil because it's got such a big Catholic background. I think it's more tied into that rather than that's the right religion or anything like that. But there are some amazing cases, even with psychic surgery, where you'll have Dr. Khan is one particular surgeon that comes through. The day his medium died in Brazil, he started to come through a different medium in another part of Brazil. He was researched by some German scientists and doctors. They basically went out there to prove he was fake, but actually found out he was genuine. And I've got videos where you can see he does. So the doctors themselves put themselves as volunteers, and I've got video of where they're actually cut and he's removed tumors and stuff from the body. He then gives them the tumors to take away with them. And one experiment they did as well is they took patients who had seen Dr. Khan from one part of Brazil and brought them to this new Dr. Khan who's come through this different medium. And not only did he recognize them, he remembered what he treated them for. Another interesting thing you often get with a lot of Brazilian psychic surgeons is with a lot of them, not just with psychic surgery, you get it with spirit art and things like that as well. A lot of them are not allowed to make any money from doing the spirit work. A lot of them have been forbidden, or they're only allowed to charge foreigners. And actually, when you look at Brazil, because of the culture, a lot of the psychic surgeons there are like the normal doctors. People can't afford to go to the doctors, so they go to the local psychic surgeons. So I think that's another reason why it is so big out there. But it's definitely getting a lot more popular within the Western world. And as I said, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, sorry about that. I wasn't expecting to be up so soon. Gary, with psychic surgery, does that have more of an immediate effect on the patient than any other modality?
Yes. So not trying to sing the praise of psychic surgery, but yes, what I have seen with psychic surgery is we do tend to get a lot more instant results with psychic surgery. So you'll get a lot more people who will get off the couch and they've got results there and then. However, what you've also got with psychic surgery is you tend to have a higher rate of a healing crisis. So you get people who they'll get off the couch and they feel absolutely great, and then the next day they feel like they've been hit by a bus. And that can last sometimes a couple of days, because ideally when the body is responding, sometimes the body will use things like inflammation to heal. So for example, a great example, if you injure your back and you're going to a chiropractor, the reason you have to keep going back to the chiropractor is they put your muscles correct, and then the muscle memory pulls you back out of alignment. So what Abraham will do in those situations is he will re-inflame the muscles to change the cell memory. So that means for a couple of days, you may feel more tender than you were beforehand, but then afterwards you tend to feel much better. So yes, we tend to get a lot quicker results, a lot more quicker physical results, but there tends to be a deeper healing process. The other thing as well, not just with psychic surgery, but healing in general, is when you have an emotional problem, healing doesn't take away the emotion, because you still need to learn from it. What it does is it brings it to the surface so that your body can deal with it. Now that might mean that you've got 3 or 4 days of crying, tears, laughter, or what a lot of people do is they don't release emotionally, they release physically. So they're sweating more, toilet more, flu symptoms. The other thing I get a lot is I work on someone's back and I will say to them, look, you need to treat it like you've had surgery, no heavy lifting, no dancing. Even if you feel fine tomorrow, for at least a week, no heavy lifting, no dancing. And I'll get so many clients who will say, oh, I can't, I've got to work. I've got a physical job, I've got kids. And what will happen is they'll get the result and then they'll undo the result. You'll be amazed how many people will actually injure themselves to see if they're actually better. A lot of people don't realize as well that if you couldn't do cartwheels before the healing, doesn't mean you're going to be able to do cartwheels after the healing. So I will get a lot of patients who will re-injure themselves. They'll then come back, they'll make time to actually recover afterwards, and then they'll get the result they're looking for.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that. Is the end result more effective than any other modality?
Only if we've really got into that physical triggering route. So for a lot of people, just hands-on healing, where we're just sending energy, we're not necessarily dealing with why the person has the issue, what the emotion behind it is. We're just sending healing to correct it. In a lot of cases, that might be enough to solve the problem. And you'll get someone who will go into remission and the problem won't come back. For a lot of people, though, if you're not dealing with why the issue is there in the first place, it's going to come back. So with psychic surgery, we're really trying to deal with all those levels, where some hands-on healing may not be dealing with those levels. So then you may not get the result you're looking for.
I'm just wondering if it's teachable, you know, the psychic surgery. Is it teachable by you, or is it spirit that choose and teach the student?
I'd say it's a mixture. It's a bit like trance development. So everyone can do trance, but you just need to find the way that works for you. So what we're trying to do when we're teaching psychic surgery is we're looking at how does your team work with your energy? How do you utilize that energy? What's going to be the best way for you to work with that energy? So that might be hands-on, it may be hands-off. You may work with color, sound, you may use tools. I know some fantastic psychic surgeons who will just sit opposite the person. They won't touch them at all and get some great results. And I know others that work great hands-on. So we're looking just to see what's the best way for you to utilize the energy. What we're then looking at is, one thing we do often is when people work with spirit, because we've spent our whole life being in control of our body, we tend to tense or hold ourselves without even realizing we're doing it. One example I'll often with students is as they're working, I'll ask them to describe what their team are doing while they're working. And most people will talk with their hands. So they'll start talking, they'll start using their hands. And then I'll remind them that if spirit are in control right now, your hands shouldn't be moving as you're talking. Spirit should still be working. But we do it and we don't realize we do it. So it's just training your body to be aware of when you interfere and then getting your mind out of the way with that.
Yes, I have actually two connected questions, Gary. One is, do you sometimes have like a negative effect? So for example, you heal somebody and he or she gets worse. And secondly, I want to ask, do you do only physical issues, or sometimes people, you know, have mental or emotional or something like this? So this the questions.
So I've never made anyone worse that I know of. And they never got back in touch if they did. No, so never made anyone worse. What can happen though, and it's not just with psychic surgery, but sometimes when you heal something, it can actually bring something else to the surface that you weren't aware of. So for example, we heal your neck and then all of a sudden you're aware of a lower back pain that's always been there, but because all the pressure was going to the neck, you just weren't aware of it. That can happen. It's rarer, but it can sometimes happen. And so that's not just with psychic surgery. That can be with any healing modality where other issues can pop up. And with healing, we're not just working with physical. So briefly, the areas we're looking at is physical. So anyway, it would manifest physically, mental. So that's not just mental thoughts, but also programming. So we are like computers. We run on programs, belief systems. So sometimes we need to change those. Emotional, so any way emotions would manifest and affect you. Past life, linked with past life, we've got karma. Difference being if you were hung in a past life and now have a neck problem, that's past life. Whereas if you hung someone in a past life and now have a neck problem, that's going to be more karmic. World karma, so we as a human race create disease. So we as a human race live in a world where we have disease and we have to pay that off as a group consciousness. Genetics, or genetics and inheritance. So that's what we get from our parents, our grandparents, normally going back 8 generations. Linked with genetics, we have what's called genotype. So for example, my genotype is Irish, so I'm part vampire. If I go out in the sun, I burn. Whereas someone who's got, say, an Italian genotype just thinks about the sun and they get a tan. Then you've got environmental. If you live in the city, you'll tend to have worse skin than if you live in the country because there's more pollutants in the air. And then linked with environmental, you have what's called phenotype. So if you're born in Hiroshima after the bomb, because of all the radiation in the air, you may have genetic illnesses, you may have deformities. So those are some of the areas we may look at. And also, we're also going to work with a lot of conditions that haven't manifested yet, because prevention is always better than cure.
Hi, just wondering your success rate on joint issues, you know, bone, hard material like that versus soft tissue. So, you know, like hip problems, you know, knee and all that. A lot of people are getting joint replacements is my concern.
Yeah, and sadly, when you do have a joint replacement, it does tend to wear out the other joints. So if you have one knee done, they'll often say you'll be back in a year for the next one. So back problems and bone problems are Abraham's specialty. So probably the best results we get are with bones and back problems.
So obviously, if someone had already had their, say, hip replaced, it's too late to get a psychic healing on that.
Not necessarily. So what we'd be looking to do in those cases is, first, we're going to make sure there's no immune response so that your immune system isn't creating more inflammation in the area, which may be creating more damage and pain. We're going to look at the nerves and surrounding tissue. We're going to try and support the bones that are still around the area, strengthen them up. So we can still work with someone who's had a replacement and break down scar tissue or any area, any problem that may be going on in that area, we can try and fix.
Is this something you'd have to address time and time again over a period of time? In other words, more than one session?
So I believe it worked out 52% of the people we treat only ever need one session. 38% may need a follow-up or follow-ups, and 10% may not get the result that they're looking for. Now, that can be someone who comes with 100 symptoms, 99 disappear, but because they still have a cough, the healing didn't work. Or it can also be someone that we fixed their back, we've said no heavy lifting, and then the following day they're moving tables and they undo the healing.
Interesting. So is it okay for me to ask you how you make a living? Do you charge for this, or do you have another type of job for money?
No, so I do this full time. So I have clinics throughout the world, or throughout England at the moment because of lockdown. But yeah, so I work full time doing this.
So is there also an association of some sort? Let's say we're in America, where we can find psychic healers like yourself who are, you know, highly developed and qualified.
There was talks about it before. I was in talks with a couple of people a couple of years ago, but nothing really came of it. Sadly, spirit is amazing, but whenever you apply humans to spirit, politics always get in the way. So nothing really ever came of it. There are some amazing psychic surgeons around the world. There are some very bad psychic surgeons around the world, but there isn't any set organization that I know of, sadly.
Have you written a book?
No, not yet. I keep meaning to, but I never get around to it. I even had a book, one of the big book companies in the past actually said, look, we've got a book already written. We'll just put your name to it. Because it was taking me so long to write anything. But I was like, no, if I'm not writing it myself. One day, hopefully I'll get one out one day.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. for all your work. Could you tell me how we can get in touch with a psychic eye surgeon for my brother overseas who's facing a quite traumatic operation to transplant a cornea?
If you take my details, if you message me afterwards, I can probably find someone in your area, or I can see what I can do to help. If I can't help, then I can definitely see who I can put you in touch with.
Thank you. How did you put something in chat?
I'll put my email address on the chat for the end.
On the chat.
We'll
Thank
do
you
it on the end.
You know, even if it's just a bit of advice, one thing that Abraham was a big fan of as well is natural remedies. So in a lot of cases, it might just be that natural remedy might be what you need, or just a bit of absent healing. So by all means, even if you just got a question, reach out to me. If I can help, I will.
Thank you, Gary, for all you do. Are you able to communicate to the client what the genesis was of the illness?
Yep. So I'm not a doctor, so you're in safe hands. So I'm not medically trained at all. The extent of my medical knowledge, actually no, I'm a bit more. Up till recently, the extent of my medical knowledge was first aid at work. But if I'm honest, the only reason I got the qualification was because I paid for the course. Because when it came to the exam, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. There was a woman on the course with me who didn't speak a word of English, and she passed as well. So that was the extent of my medical knowledge up until recently. So all the years of working with Abraham, he taught me a lot. All my medical knowledge really came from Abraham. So when I first started working with him, he would talk to me nonstop. Nowadays, he kind of lets me get on while he's working. He'll let me work out what's going on. If I start to say the wrong thing, he'll then step in and correct me. So the way it will work is, while he's doing the physical work through me, I will be doing the medical intuitive side. So I'll be trying to work out what that physical trigger and root is, and give it as much information as I can. Because with healing as well, the more information we can give you, the more likely we can make those changes. So, you know, another example we often use is if you take someone in an abusive relationship, yes, you can give them healing for the emotional hurt and the bruises, but 9 out of 10 times if they come out of that relationship, they're going to go into another abusive relationship, because energetically, that's what they're attracting. That's all their energy knows. So with healing, we want to change that pattern as well, so that they can actually start to attract the right people into their life. So otherwise, we're just treating symptoms. So yes, with psychic surgery, we're going to try and make the person as much as we can aware of where they're allowing that in their energy and what changes they need to make in their energy or in their mindset to make that change permanent.
Hello, Gary. How are you today? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. When body parts are removed physically, what happens to them? They just like dissipate?
What, as in through psychic surgery, or?
Yes. Like say you physically open someone and you take out some gooey mass or whatever. Like, does it just dissipate?
So when there's a research aspect, what would happen is, so for example, I've got one video of Dr. Karen working where he cuts this tumor out of this doctor's back, and then he gives them the tumor so they can take that away and prove that that is that tumor. It's not just chicken. So fake psychic surgeons in the past would often use chicken guts and pig's blood because they resembled a lot of human. So it was very secretive. You didn't get to see what was going on. A lot was hidden. Whereas with genuine psychic surgery, you can see them cutting away. They're happy to cut things out and give it. So when there's a research aspect, they will cut out things like the cancers and the tumors and give the tumors to the doctors, and that will disintegrate over time, just like normal cells will. With the majority of psychic surgery, though, what they're actually removing from the body is actually a manifestation of the illness. So, for example, I've seen crystals come out of people's bodies, or what looks like crystals coming out of people's bodies. I've got videos of crystals coming out of this person's eye, which is the manifestation of the cataracts. So often what will happen is you'll get like a black substance or a gooey substance coming out of the body. And it's just an accumulation of cells and tissues in the body. And that, again, will begin to disintegrate over time, just like any tissue would once it's removed from the body.
Can you do distance healing ever?
Yeah, we do a lot of distance healing. So similar things. So we'll tune into the person. I'll let Abraham work. As he's working, I'll work out what's going on. I'll try and get all the kind of information on the physical trigger and root to give that information to the person.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gary.
If one wants to get training in this and to find out like who their own team is And actually, I'd like to do that and even start working on myself. I wanted to know how one could do that. And the second thing is can autoimmune illnesses and internal scarring be healed? Those are the two questions.
Yeah, so I run an online program. I'll put it on the chat. But yeah, I think I work on the basis if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's just working out what works for you, who's working with you, and what's the best way to build that energy with you. So we use a range of different techniques aimed at hopefully developing you as an individual to work out what works for you. In regards to the autoimmune, it's something that's very common nowadays. And this is why you have so many books out there that say we can get rid of 90% of our illnesses just by changing our diet. Because we all have so much inflammation in the body that our immune systems, because of our environment, what's putting into the body, what we're putting on the body, is just causing our immune system to go haywire and attack itself. So it is something we work with a lot. And we do work a lot with scar tissue as well. So again, we work with the basis the body built itself. So anything the body has created, it can, in theory, repair itself. Another thing we work with a lot is animals. Animals are very receptive to healing. They're a lot more aware of healing than humans are. What I love about working with animals is they will know the healing's finished literally moments before I do. They'll often just sit there, allow the healing, and then they'll get up and walk away when they're done. And especially our domesticated animals, like our cats and dogs, I think they really need healing because they're so in tune with our energy that actually, if you look at most of the illnesses that our domesticated animals get, so cats, dogs, horses, they'll actually manifest the same illnesses that their owners have, sometimes a year or so before the owner even gets it. So they'll even die with heart conditions. If the owner has heart condition, they'll get the same cancers that the owner has. They're so in tune with our energy that they take on that energy and they will manifest the same illnesses. So I really think our domesticated animals really need healing and are definitely in need of healing. And they're so much more in tune with us.
Hello, Gary. Thank you for your interesting talk. I wanted to know if you know any of the doctors' names who work with Abraham, with yourself.
I only know of one other doctor that works with Abraham. I can't remember her last name. It's been so long since she's come through. Dr. Nicole. It's the only one I know of. So Abraham has said that he has 37 different surgeons working with him who specialize in different areas. So that I don't get confused, I always deal directly with Abraham. I will see additional hands working when I'm working, but it's still Abraham that gives me that information. But every now and then I will get this Dr. Nicole who will come in. She also specializes in back problems. One thing that's interesting is, so with genuine psychic surgery, there's generally no pain. There's a famous psychic surgeon from the past called Arrigo, and he was known as the surgeon with the rusty knife because he would work with this rusty knife, and one of the common things he would do is he would stick this rusty knife, leave it hanging out of your eye for a couple of minutes while he was working. And I've actually seen video of this one patient. He's got this knife sticking out of his eye, but he's more disturbed by this fly on his cheek than this knife sticking out of your eye. And then when I was out working with John of God, I would talk to people afterwards and say, were you scared? Did you feel any pain? And what they would all report is they would feel nervous, but just before spirit would start working on them, this calm would come over them. And they would just feel relaxed and they wouldn't feel any pain. They'd feel discomfort sometimes, but there was never any pain.
Yes, thank you. But I wanted to ask another quick question, if I may. Gary, could you tell me where do you get the sterile needle for stitching up afterwards?
Sorry?
Where do you get the sterile needle from?
Oh, so yeah, in Brazil, the Philippines, I said there's no regulations in regards to the knives they use, how clean the room is, but the needle they use, if they do so some surgeons will sew you up afterwards. You've got someone like Romelda, who she will actually rub the skin together. So she'll cut you with a knife and she'll use a knife while she's working, but then at the end, she'll just rub the skin together and the skin will heal. So she doesn't stitch you up. A lot of them will stitch you up and they will use a sterilized needle. So they'll use a needle that's been sealed beforehand and then they'll sew you up.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, Gary. Gary, sorry for the basic and knowledge and stuff. You spoke of the physical, the trigger and the root earlier, and I was going to ask about an autoimmune disorder and how it would manifest, and you spoke about diet. Would there be a case that the physical mind could cause the autoimmune disorder? And if so, how could that be sort of transversed? But also, the autoimmune disorder can cause problems with the organs, as we know. So how can that be fixed with this psychic surgery?
So this is one of the reasons why we always treat everyone as an individual. So you could have two people with the exact same condition, but how and why they manifest it may be completely different. So what we're doing is we are finding the symptoms that you're presenting with, but we're tracing it back to where it's stemming from. So is it the liver that's affecting the stomach, or is it the stomach that's affecting the liver? If so, what's happened in the stomach to start that off, and why is the liver then responding to that? So we're trying to get the full picture to, because what you'll also get is you'll get crossovers. So you'll then get to a stage where your stomach's actually affecting the liver, and then the liver's affecting the stomach. So you're just stuck in that negative feedback cycle, or positive feedback cycle. So we're looking to see then where we need to break it. And you'll get people who will come with a list of problems. And psychic surgery compared to other forms of healing is actually very quick. So when I work, it takes me about 10 to 20 minutes per person. Most psychic surgeons take about 2 or 3 minutes to work. It's very, very quick, because although you might come with 100 symptoms, it may just be one thing that's causing all those symptoms. So if we fix that one thing, everything else should take care of itself.
Okay, so may I ask quickly one other one? It is in the same relation to the same question. You said each person can fix themselves. So if it were the mind, could they not, I said to you, would there be a fix, or would it need sort of surgery because of the physical problems with the organs?
Some people may need intervention, and it's a bit like mediumship. So with mediumship, there's nothing to say that we can't all do readings for ourselves. There's no reason that we have to go to another medium. However, our own mind, our own ego gets in the way. So sometimes it's easier for us to get that information or that energy from somebody else that's impartial or not involved in our energy. And sometimes seeing things from a different angle, we can become aware of things that we weren't actually aware of. So some people do need that intervention or may need that connection.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. It's very fascinating listening to you. My question is, can surgery, this modality, heal COVID?
We have worked with people who have suffered with COVID, or especially here in the UK, we have a lot of long COVID sufferers. So people who are still suffering months later after COVID. Yeah, so in those cases, there tends to be a lot of an autoimmune response. And COVID's one of those things where it's not the virus or the disease that's necessarily the problem, it's how your body responds to it that then creates the problems. So it's your body trying to repair itself that's causing all the scarring and all the damaging. So in those cases, we're actually trying to get the body to calm itself down and to stop reacting, and then to break that cycle so that your natural immune system can kick in and do what it needs to do. So yeah, we have worked with people who have suffered with COVID at the time and then long COVID afterwards.
So are you saying, so perhaps this is a solution that's alternative to the COVID vaccine?
I wouldn't say so. With psychic surgery, we would always say it's not there to replace medicine, it's there to work alongside medicine. But everyone has to decide for themselves what's right for their body.
Okay, yeah, because you mentioned also prevention, using this as a prevention way. So that's along the line with you know, what the vaccine does. And I mean, theoretically. Like,
again, diet-wise, I'm the world's biggest hypocrite. I could talk you out of ever going back to a supermarket because of all the rubbish that's in our food, but I will still eat McDonald's and all the rest of it. So it's each to their own, really. You just got to find what works for you and what you're willing to put into your health.
Thank you, Gary.
Gary, I wanted to ask you, you were talking about Aboriginals and their healing, but you know, Indigenous societies seem to only have one, say, witch doctor, one healer. So how do they nominate that? Are they raised like that?
As far as I know, it would be, with all kind of spiritual things, is you would have the nominated person, but that nominated person would then teach it to the future generations. So for example, even things like tea leaf reading, each family would have their own symbology. And it would be the job of the grandmother to teach the grandkids that family symbology. So the same thing with remedies and medicines, things like that. Normally the grandparents would teach it to the grandkids as they raise them, and that would pass on.
Okay. And then very quickly, the next one is that is interesting. I love all of this. It's really interesting. But next week is your intention to bring, or next time, to bring Abraham through so we could talk to him as well and get his view on it?
Yeah, definitely possible if people want. I'm happy to, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
He's more interesting.
No, you are.
Given the
so some interesting experiments have done with Abe in the past. So it did some great work with Trisha Robinson for over 5 years, which you can read about in her book. She goes into quite good detail where she researched it for over 5 years with some amazing results. I've also done work with Harry Oldfield, Dr. Harry Oldfield. He used something called a mind mirror on me, which was really interesting. I've done some work with Inga as well, with mind mirror as well. And it's interesting how the brain waves will change when spirits step forward compared to when they're not. But one thing that is interesting is, again, how my brain waves react when I work with spirit is different to other people. So it's not one size fits all. How I direct energy and how spirit work through me may be completely different to how they work through you. But you could be just as effective with your results as I am with my results, as long as you're doing it the right way for your energy. Psychic surgery is an amazing subject, and I said there's a lot out there that a lot of people don't know. Even when I was saying earlier, like these German doctors and surgeons, where they researched Dr. Kahn, the videos were never made public. Once they proved that he was genuine, the videos were locked away, never to be seen again, really. Arrigo was a very famous psychic surgeon. He was so famous that he was put in prison twice. The first time he was put in prison because the Catholic Church and the medical community took him to court for practicing medicine without license. First time he was put in prison, the president pardoned him. He was so popular that when he got sentenced to prison, he had to drive himself to the prison because the police refused to arrest him. And when he got to the prison, the warden gave him a key and said, "Come and go as you please." So he was still working from prison. And he had doctors throughout the world come and testify to his work, that he was genuine, how well he was researched. And again, most people don't know about that research. And sadly, all the videos were in a fire a couple of years ago. So there's not a lot of the videos left now, sadly.
We've got Trisha Robertson here. Trisha, do you want to talk about the time that you spent with Gary?
Yes, indeed. Hi, Gary.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
good. Yes, I actually organised some experiments with Gary over about 5 years. Gary, it's about 10 years since we've seen each other. And Gary certainly does everything he says he can do. The healing results are excellent. And as people ask, some were instant, and some people had to come back a second time. And we also had the one where Gary really helped a man with cancer, and then the man went back to drink again. And of course, when he started drinking again, then his cancer came back. So I just want to testify that Gary can indeed do everything that he has said he's done. Arrigo, of course, I've written about as well. And I can only commend you with carrying on with this work and give my love to Abraham.
Trisha, what's the name of your book that you've got these people in?
It's the first two. I've also got on my website a 64-page document. It's called Ostensible Paranormal Healing, and it's on my website. I'll put the website up again, and it's about Gary and one other healer, and it gives you individual cases and what happened and the results, and that will explain it to you if you can be bothered reading 64 pages. But it's the first two books, Things You Can Do When You're Dead and More Things You Can Do When You're Dead. First two books, not the last one, has got the healing element. Okay. Cheers, Gary.
I got hundreds of questions, but I'll stick it to one.
Because we've got 3 or 4 after you, and
I know.
we've run out of time.
Very simply, can Abraham and his colleagues in practice, can they do spinal surgery by Zoom?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work with backs over Zoom and through absent healing, and we've had some really good report results with that.
Does the lack of intention, as far as a person being a skeptic, affect the results?
No, as long as they want to get better. Some of my best results have actually been with skeptics. As long as they want to get better. It doesn't matter what they believe is happening. As long as they want to get better, their body should respond.
Okay, I'll stop there. I have lots, but I'll stop there.
Thanks, Gary, again. What about things like Parkinson's and also renal problems where people are on dialysis?
Yes, so we've worked a lot with Parkinson's and renal and kidneys and stuff like that. Had some amazing results. So with things like that, we're trying to basically stimulate the absorption of vitamin D back in the body, sometimes vitamin K as well. We're trying to sometimes break down the plaque that's building up in the brain or the nerve tissue. So yeah, we've had some amazing results with that. Again, I remember with the BBC documentary, we had a gentleman who had quite advanced Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And after 3 treatments, I saw him once a month for 3 months. After the 3rd treatment, he was taken off all Alzheimer's medication. He no longer presented any symptoms of Alzheimer's. So the body, again, it has the potential to repair itself. What I have found with things like Alzheimer's and memory is even where we've made improvement to stop the symptoms, sometimes the memories themselves don't necessarily come back though.
Thanks, and thanks for letting me ask one more question. Mine's actually a little related to what Karen was also interested in. And I have heard before that animals will sometimes take on the illness of their owners, but how common have you found it to be for caretakers, human caretakers, to take on the illness of the people that they've cared for, or just generally empathic people to begin with, since this would be a group that would have a lot of those types in it? Is that a common thing?
You do see that a lot, and you'll get a lot of people who are very ill who will outlive all their carers. Some people do have everything that doesn't kill you, and it then drains everyone around them that's taking care of them sometimes. Healers get it as well. So one thing we do when we're working with healers is we do a lot of self-healing, because a lot of healers will find in their everyday life, a lot of their friends are more clients than friends. And that's because they have the intention that they want to help, but they don't switch off. When they're not healing, they don't switch off. So they're still attracting into their energy people that need healing. Another great example is hairdressers. Hairdressers are like cheap psychologists. You go there, you get your hair done, you unload, you come away feeling great, and the hairdresser feels exhausted afterwards, because some people are psychic vampires and don't realize that they're doing it. And people who want to help will tend to attract that. So yeah, we do come across that a lot, and we do a lot of work with that.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wondered if when a healing session is going on, whether before it ends, Abraham or you come up with like additional suggestions to keep the healing. Like you mentioned, you know, one person went back to bad habits. Are things like that mentioned? You know, you need to change your diet, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, or take such and such a supplement or whatever.
Yes, so generally when we're healing, we'll try and give as much information as we can. We may recommend some remedies afterwards that may aid or speed up the healing. And we may give advice. So for example, I may say to you, you need to, no heavy lifting, no gym, you need to avoid this food for so long. Most people will follow that aftercare advice. A lot of people, I often get a lot of people that they feel great the next day, they forget all about their illness, and then they go and do something to undo the healing because they're no longer in pain, they forget about it. Come across that a lot.
Does it put a lot of strain on you? I mean, how many healings can you do in a day or a week? Or do you feel any strain?
So what's interesting is, so when I first started, I could probably do about 2 or 3 a day and I'd be exhausted. Now I can do up to around 15 a day. Some psychic surgeons can do over 100 a day. I'm still young, it's my argument. So yeah, I can do about 15 a day, and as long as I don't go over that, I recover quite quickly. What I found interesting though is where England was in lockdown, I would go sometimes weeks without having clinics. So prior to that, doing 15 a day, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, no problem. Having gone a couple of weeks not doing it and then having a clinic of 15 people wiped me out. So getting out of practice, and when you're working with spirit, it is like building a muscle. So as long as you keep using that muscle, it grows strong. But when you don't use that, that muscle becomes weaker. So then when you go to use it again, it takes a lot more out of you. So getting back into it, I had a couple of days where I was quite wiped out, felt a bit ill, but I'm back in the flow of it now. So yeah, as long as I keep on top of it and don't go over 15 a day, then I tend to be fine.
Good. Stay healthy.
I do.
I was wondering how, if you have any knowledge, or if there have been any studies comparing your work with psychic surgery with the power of prayer, let's say. And, you know, everybody knows about prayer, but sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. Do you have anything to say about that?
I know there has been loads of studies done over the years on things like prayer, placebo, positive thinking, meditation. There is a lot of research out there. I don't know if there's any that's in comparison to psychic surgery. Probably the closest I can think of. There's a woman called Laura Bauer. So she's an anthropologist. So she researched me for, I think it's about 4 years she spent with me. So she took the anthropological aspect of psychic surgery. So how do people's beliefs and ideas in regards to psychic surgery affect their healing? So that's probably the closest. She wrote a book about that. So yeah, that's probably the closest that's been done to things like prayer and comparisons.
I saw somewhere in the write-up that you could teach people to kind of apply this to themselves. So like when I hold up my hands like this, I feel a vibration. And so I'm wondering if I might have, you know, an innate ability that could be developed, and how would I do that?
Yeah, so I do think everyone has an ability. I said we'd be looking at what's the best way for you to utilize that energy or work with that energy. So you could look at the mentorship program. I put it on the website if anyone's interested on in the mentorship and then that, or you could try attending workshops on healing, seeing where you're drawn to. There's so many healing modalities out there that if anyone wants to go for a set healing modality, I'd always say go to what you're drawn to, because you know, sometimes Reiki could be a great starting point for people. Spiritual healing might be a great starting point for people. Always go to what you're drawn to. There's a reason why you're drawn to it. Or with the mentorship program, we can chuck you into the deep end and try different techniques and see what does or doesn't work for you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
There you go. It didn't work. Sorry. No experience with Zoom. Ha! I just thought maybe there's some people here who were here a while back when I was talking about Gary and Abraham's healing. And I just thought it'd be nice to finish with that story where it went. A young friend of mine was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma at 27, and no more treatment available, you know, for her. So they were basically saying, well, you know, you just were gonna have to die. And then Abraham worked with Sarah, and over 3 months, all the tumors were gone. And now 6 months later, she's back into nursing. She has a great life, as she always was hoping, because she also has a small child. But I was found very interesting. We had a session with a lady who does EFT, and she is very connected to spirit, and she believes that she heard Abraham say when she was talking to Sarah to let her know to stop fearing so much and constantly think about it, because he did it once and he can do it again, but also how much our mind and our fear of something brings it into our reality. I found that really interesting. You know, it's just like, he's just the best. There's nothing to say about it. He's just the best.
All good. I think, Gary, it's been a fascinating talk, and I hope you will come back to us again.
Anytime.
There's obviously a great deal of interest in this kind of healing, and people are all wanting more, which is wonderful. So thank you so much.